it's great to have you here. I'm so excited. I know this is the last one. I know that you've been working so hard for Longmont doing these city council meetings, and then you come on here today totally exhausted because you've probably been up to midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. And well, if the job was easy, everybody would be doing it. So we want to give you some grace at how
Thank you.
exhausted
Thank you.
it
There are
and
three
how
of us on council
exhausted.
that are knocking doors and walking the blocks and doing all this. And so last night we kind of looked at each other and we're all have tired eyes and and that's okay. That's the job. And it actually kind of trains you for city council because last night was a late night and sometimes you have those. So you start learning endurance again, you know, which
Oh,
is
I'm
it's a good thing.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't envy you, but I do admire what you bring to city council. I've listened to you. I've seen them think more often than before they just make a quick vote on things.
Mhm.
And I see you bringing to the table, looking at the bigger picture, asking more questions. And that's what I think Longmont is looking for. Please, at least look at the bigger picture of thing. We want the economy working together. And how do we do that? So, with that, I would like to bring up the airport because I'm a pilot and I flew years ago out of this airport here, and I've seen lots of changes. And even when I was friends with the CEO back then, he was talking about it is a discrepancy with city council every single year. I'm pretty sure it's every year, maybe every other year, where it comes up about their budget and all.
Uh,
Then I was out there, oh, probably 6 months ago, just sitting, watching the airplanes land, and I heard someone walk in, one of the pilots, and he said, "Oh my goodness, they want to raise our hangar rates from like 500 a year to 500 a month or something like that." Well, this is all the economy. I think people do not understand capitalism and how the system works, which once again is why I'm so eager to have you voice your opinion and get people to think further about that. So rules and regulations, maybe they're changing that. And policy ordinances, they keep getting thrown at us. So from there, now that I've blurted out my concerns, I'm going to turn it over to you.
yeah, okay. So the airport is a big issue, was a big issue last night actually. Um, I think people that live near the airport are frustrated with noise and traffic and what have you. But it's not any different than what we've heard about the train. Um,
Oh, right.
People used to say to me, why did they put the train right through the middle of town? Well, actually, the town built up around the train. Um,
Mhm.
and kind of the same thing happened with the airport. Is it used to be way out there on the west side, and then people that fly wanted to have housing closer. So we started building closer, and now we're in a kind of the same position where people are close to the airport and they're noticing it more, noticing the traffic and the noise. And so all of it matters. I mean, we're all live in this town. We all have to be fairly happy where we live. But it kept coming up last night about how how and who are we going to be? And one of the things is there's a big push to say the airport should pay for itself. The truth is that the biggest investor in that airport has been the taxpayer for 80 years. It was something
Oh,
that the city has subsidized from the get-go. It is our newest form of transportation. That makes sense that we wanted something new and we wanted to be on the innovative edge as we tend to do in Longmont. And so when we're saying it needs to pay its own way, that's interesting. It is something that I agree with as a capitalist and a businesswoman. However, that hasn't been our policy on the council and as a city almost from the get-go. And
Mhm.
when we decided we were going to secure water rights, we looked at it as a collective public, um, what do I say, public asset that we were buying with taxpayer dollars. And the same thing is true with the airport. So our policy up to now has been to subsidize those things that we think are part of the public good. Roads, water, electric, next light. You think about all these, they've all been subsidized from tax dollars. And so it's a philosophical question. Who do we want to be? I've had in the past, I've listened to candidates say, we shouldn't even be paving the roads. But if you, yeah, I know, because
Okay.
everything should just pay its own way. Okay, but I don't think we would have paved roads. And
Well,
sometimes,
can I ask
and,
you?
and I guess the question is, are you the type of person that feels like I shouldn't have to pay for Ginny's road and Ginny shouldn't have to pay for my road because we're not using those roads. We only use our own roads to our own homes, or is it benefits us to have a road to everybody's home? Do you see
Let's
what I'm
go
saying?
back to dirt and then we pour our old oil on the road or something like
Yeah,
that
I know.
to keep the
Because I
dust
come
down.
from the farm and that really happened to cut down on the dust.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, then we also, now, wait a second. I thought that the FAA is involved with any airport,
Mhm.
that we can't just plunk down an airport. I'm pretty sure that they're involved with it. And I thought they were also involved with it money wise, besides just rules and regulations. Am I wrong?
No, you bring up a very good point. The FAA has also subsidized our airport as is their policy to do, and it's usually a 95% on their part and 5% on our part. But when it comes down to it, it's federal dollars to municipal dollars. So the 5% would be municipal dollars, and there are
Oh,
some state
you
grants
know,
as well.
you keep doing percentage. Can you give us an idea? What is it? Billions? Is it millions? Do we know?
We have to look. The airport's 80 years old. Last night, as a matter of fact, it came up. So it was very
Uh,
apropos that we were talking about it. 80 years old. And
let's get up to a century.
I know, well, but if you think about it, it's a whole generation that has
Yeah.
invested in this airport. And since 1945. So you can also see the impact that it was from World War II that we said, okay, this is important to have. It's important to train pilots. It's kind of Longmont. I mean, I'm storytelling here, but probably you could see Longmont would be saying, if our sons and daughters are going to go to war, we want them well trained, and,
Ah,
and we're going to, invest in that. And or, also as the war had ended, World War II had ended, seeing that that was a high potential new career for people because,
oh.
people are going to fly. And
Mhm.
so, and we even had a gal speak last night saying this was her dream job was to train other pilots. And um, and so it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in a generation. And it's
Mhm.
sort of a heartwarming in a way because my dad was a World War II vet, and I
Oh,
totally understand that feeling about flying
yeah.
and
Yeah.
the
It,
attachment
it
to.
is it is a challenge and I absolutely loved it. Back when I was flying in the 90s, they were talking even back then of extending the runway a mile or something like that, which brings in the idea for me of Aspen and how Aspen ended up extending their runway with us having Sundance Film Festival coming in.
Mhm.
Boulder Airport is not as active.
Correct.
So maybe these people would fly into Longmont. What's the thinking on that with city council?
Well, thanks for bringing that up. I was the first one to say, what about Sundance? I mean, the public did say something, but I said we have to be very careful if we start charging fees that it isn't perceived as we're just targeting, the new Sundance
Mhm.
people, because they
Right.
were, one of their things is they were very concerned about price gouging, over time. Everybody raises their prices when it's Sundance Festival, and we want to be different in the way we approach them. And also, but I do think people are going to fly into Longmont. It makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And there are people that have those types of planes and that type of means, and it's a lot closer than DIA. So,
Huge. Yeah.
just
Huge.
generally, when I travel around the country, and we did for a while do, my husband was doing work at different installations around the country. And when we would get to a town, if it had an airport, I knew that it had a better economy. And
Really?
yes, and hands down, that was true.
Huh.
And people would say, people that were, maybe stationed at the bases there. My husband was going from military base, and so a lot of times we would have an air station just from the military. But if there was a small town nearby that where we had to live and there wasn't an airport, people would say, "Well, I can't ever see my family or my friends because no one can get here." And
Interesting.
just having an airport means there's more transportation.
Hmm.
And I know that when we moved around, it became a thing for me. I'd say, well, if we're going to look for an apartment or a place to live while you're working here, let's pick this town over town B because it has an airport, and I know there'll be more commercial sites there. And that was true, hands down.
Isn't the future of cars to be flying cars?
Yes, yes. And when you look at what futurists are thinking for us, it's all pretty much in the air. And in
Yeah.
a way that makes sense with our other goals, because we think about how much roadway we have. That's where the land is, right? When we
Uh-huh.
talk about density and what have you, if we got rid of the roads and we built on the road, we would have a lot more space. And then we would have more space for open space. Do you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for going down that path too, because I agree. I think 80 years isn't that long to have had an airport, but what's going to happen in the next generation? And the one
Right.
thing we know with AI, and just also, gosh, I had a neighbor that was 100 years old. And to look at her lifetime, that went from the Model T, so she was born in 1920, okay,
Yep.
go from the Model T to where we are now with vehicles and airplanes, and to go from not having any kind of computer. I mean, the first computer was built in 1955, and now look at how much we do with computer. Everything is computerized. To
Everything.
think how much it accelerates and has accelerated in this last generation, we can only imagine what is going to happen with our children's generation,
Right. Yeah.
and what we're going to see by the time we get to be 100, if we make it that far. But
Yeah.
yeah.
But we'll work on it,
Yeah.
with our health and the possibility of staying better uh, in medicines. I think that that's come a long ways when I hear about someone getting ankle replacement and they did a 3D unit to put
Uh,
in the ankle
uh,
and it fit the person perfectly.
right. They've been doing that with teeth for probably 25, 30 years,
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just amazing what dentistry is able to do now too, to replace teeth for people, and that it really extends life also.
Yeah.
But so I think the real question is, from the city perspective, how are we going to be? Are we going to be more of a conservative point of view? And I'm not saying I'm against that, but I am saying that that hasn't typically been what our city has been about, is where everything pays its own way. Or do we think more in terms of this is a good investment for the public good, and we support that? And I think maybe we could argue that some people think we've gone a little too far with the collectivism, if you will. And also I would say some people go a little too far with the pay its own way if you're going to have people pave their own roads, because just the equipment to do that, it takes some higher level of investment from at the city level.
Yeah, I think it's a pendulum that it goes back and forth is what I keep hearing. And hopefully people will look at the bigger picture. So that,
I would just like to see that businesses are left to do what they
yes,
can do. And so when we come to that juncture where there's a balance where if we tax everybody to the maximum, then they don't have enough money in their own pockets to pay their own
right,
way. And then it
right.
kind of needs to be where the economy, and that means local business, does pay its own way and contributes in the ways that they do to society, and sponsorships and supporting the schools and the nonprofits in town. That's
Well,
what we want for the economy, right? So
right.
that means that the city has to be a little more judicious in how much taxation and fees and penalties. And so I think it's going to take a really some wisdom with our new council to come to that balance.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in today's world, what you pointed out a couple weeks ago was the point that when there's lots of money around, people are a lot more giving. So, such as Carnegie, you mentioned him.
Oh yeah, Andrew Carnegie. Yeah, one of the richest men in America during the Gilded Age. And we have Carnegie libraries everywhere. In fact, that was
Every
Longmont's
place.
first library was a Carnegie library. So
Yeah.
when you have that kind of money, you do fill in the gaps where the cities are not providing that public good, if you will.
Right.
You know,
Right.
because maybe, it was our city was agrarian at that time. There wasn't a lot of cash to tax or what have you, for the city. People could give more of their time than of their money. And so
Ah,
they have
point.
Carnegie come in and say, "Here, let me build you a building and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
charter you for a Carnegie library." That was really very useful. Yeah.
I think it's really hard for people in the city to, um, I think money is the big issue here,
Yeah.
and people feel strapped. What I see, and I want your opinion on it, is a lot of this comes from higher up. So rules and regulations are put into place thinking that you're helping with adding more policy, adding more ordinances, and yet that doesn't seem to relieve people and make it easier. And it ends up costing people more, because with these rules and regulations, there are fees that are added on, which is one thing that you brought up earlier in our conversations about how many fees are added on. So you get Sundance coming in, and yeah, you're not raising taxes, but the fees have been added on every place when you go to stay at a hotel. So so how can city council make it easier for Longmonters to survive?
Well, I think we need to deliberate more. I think we need a bigger picture point of view. We tend to get attached to our solutions and jump to them instead of
Uh,
saying, is this really going to solve the problem that we've identified? And is that really the problem? And, as you unwind it and you look from a big picture, and this is something that council actually has a real strength in that we have many points of view. So we should be able to dissect that a little bit better. But often we're jumping to a vote before we're ready, I feel, at this time. So that's something that I can bring to the table is more discussion, more big picture viewing, more of an eye to the economy. Basically the local businesses are our biggest taxpayer. Let's be very sensitive to that, make sure that they're protected and thriving. Because if they're thriving, everyone will thrive.
yeah.
It powers our city. It powers the nonprofits. It powers employment. And, just it multiplies throughout the city, throughout the municipality and the region, really. And so if we can take that point of view, I think we'll do just fine. And then the small parts that we take, and I think we need to look at our permits and our fees and what have you, and see if we really need to charge that much, um, and that often. So we also had before the council about, and I'm just going to say this, so if anybody out there hasn't heard of it yet, we'll be charging a waste management fee to uh, commercial entities, but they will have recycling opportunities. This is going to be for a year, and it's going to come back in a year because there's some credits coming for recycling. But just taking that bigger picture view of, who has to pay for our shortfall in that arena, and do we spread it evenly, but also allows services to the commercial entities, which I think they will use it for a year. But I don't know if it's something we want to continue going forward. But so what we decided is we would review it in a year, and
Okay.
there would be more, I like almost a little kickback from the states that are supporting recycling.
Oh, okay.
So that might make recycling free, so we don't have as many costs, and then we can renegotiate where does that money go, and maybe that goes into replacing our trash trucks and what have you, or subsidizing composting, which is the other thing that the rate had to be raised on that. And we would
Okay.
like more composting. So how do we achieve our goals financially? See what I'm saying? So
Right.
there's a
Yeah.
trick to having the right amount of money at the right time and place. And so, because that's what I do for a living, is business development. I think I'm particularly capable of working through that. And I had a really nice conversation, more than one, with the gentleman who's also spearheading that. And, we just talk numbers back and forth. And then we figured out what would work. And he brought it back to council, and everybody agreed that was the way to go. So it kind of solved the problem. And we just need to have more of those deeper discussions to truly understand what's the problem and how do we solve it.
Yeah. Well, I like hearing about the numbers versus percentage because to most people, percentage doesn't really mean anything. It's like saying, okay, I'm going to add on 1% here. Oh, it sounds like nothing. But when you start to add these all up, that's where people get frustrated.
Yeah. And in my profession, we're very careful with percentages because they're misleading, and
Exactly.
and you don't have a good frame of reference with them. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
yeah.
Well, we're getting down to the end. One thing that I wanted to ask is a lot of times when government people say that they're going to check into how the flow is and all that stuff, they create a task force.
Yeah, no,
So,
no, we are the task force. We
okay.
have to come together as a council and figure out, I talked, I think it was at Pints and Perspectives about, in my profession, it's typical to have a strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. And if everybody's talking about the strengths and opportunities and nobody's talking about the weaknesses and threats, we have a problem
Mm,
because they're not looking at the
okay.
whole picture.
I
And
love it.
so we have to value that contrary point of view, and we can all take turns being that contrary point of view to identify weaknesses and threats. But as a group, we have to say thanks for bringing that up, because we do like our darlings, right? Our
Right.
solutions. And then when somebody says, well, have we thought about the dark side of that,
Right.
we get a little defensive. But actually, looking at the dark side of it can be the biggest strength, because it helps you sidestep whatever problem that might create and make it
Love it.
that much more of a strength.
As
So,
opposed to shutting those people down, we
yeah.
need to listen to them. And I have to say, I do see quite a bit of faces and gestures that I think that people need to be a lot more open minded to different ideas on both sides of the table. So we are out of time. And Diane, I just want to thank you so much for doing these with me, and getting this message, your message, out to people. So the last minute, I'd love for you to do your plug.
Okay. Yeah. Tuesday. So less than a week. It's election day. Please, be very mindful in how you vote. And I have been telling people I very much appreciate a vote for me as mayor, because I think that will help give some leadership to the new council, um, in the ways that I'm describing, in the ways of, a more organizational point of view. Um, but I have also said, more so than voting for me, it's important to pick people who truly represent the city. We're replacing 2 seats at least, and possibly a third and fourth. So pick people that can work collectively together, collaboratively, and who have the best interests of the city at heart, and have some knowledge too to bring to the table. And that can be different points of knowledge. We have 2 at-large positions, so maybe make a choice that's maybe a little different between the 2. We were always, as a city and as a state, we were always a purple state. So we'd always looked for, in the past, we'd always looked for that kind of balance. And I think that's helpful again this election. So appreciate you listening to me. And please feel free to contact the city council as well as myself with concerns and comments, because that helps us form our policy.
And how can people get in touch with you?
Okay, so for my campaign, elect@dianecrist.com, and that my website, dianecrist.com, will become a communication page going forward through the next 2 years. Also, the city website has to contact all council members, so it'll say mayor and city council, and that's at my particular one is diane.crist@longmontcolorado.gov. But if you go through the portal, the City of Longmont portal, it can go to all of us, which is the best way to contact us. Thank you, Ginny. I don't want to miss saying how much I have appreciated these discussions, because you asked very good questions, very thought-provoking questions, and I think it's been very helpful for me, as well as I hope anybody that's listening has benefited from it as well. So thank you so much.
I'm sure it has. So thank you, Diane, and best of luck to you.
Oh, thanks, Ginny.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right, you too.
All
Bye.
right, bye-bye.